As it's connected. Great. Okay. All right. And we are here. 3 seconds behind, so that means we're live. Hello, audience. Hope you're doing well tonight. Let me know in the chat if anything sounds off or the video cuts out or anything. Great. So thanks for joining us. Welcome to another Playwright to Playwright, where emerging writers interview a fellow Canadian playwright that has influenced their work. I'm Justin, the project manager for the Canadian Plaything. I'd like to acknowledge that the Plaything is hosted from Victoria, BC and Calgary, Alberta. So respectively, that is the unceded territories of the Lekwungen peoples, and then Treaty 7, the territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy and the Tsuut'ina Nation. It's a great privilege that we have across the country to create and discuss theater on this land. And in discussion tonight, I'd love to bring on screen Rahul Varma, who's also joining us from Montreal, the territory of the Mohawk Nation. And Rahul is a playwright and the artistic director of Tisri Dunia Theatre. He writes in both Hindi and English, and recent plays are Counter Offense and Bopa. Hi, Rahul.
Hi, Justin,
Great.
and welcome everyone.
Yeah, and then next we have Gail Nyoka, who's currently joining us from Cleveland, Ohio, on the traditional territory of the Shawnee, Miami, and the Wyandot nations. Hopefully, when they let her back into the country, though, she'll be in BC. So we welcome her, and she is an oral storyteller as well as a playwright, and she writes for adults and young audiences, and her play, King of the Animals, was set to open in March 2020 at Talespinner Theatre in Cleveland. So hopefully somebody's going to get to see that soon when this all is different. And yeah, so I guess to start us off, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you and how you came to the theater. And I think we'll start with Rahul.
Well, okay, so thank you, Justin, and thank you, Gail, for this conversation with me. How did I come to theater? Well, you know, I'm an immigrant in this country since 1976. And it's the value of the stories, because as I remember from the very ancient times, when we began to gain consciousness, our communication was through telling of the stories. Now, how it impacted me here is after my arrival in this country, I saw theater was not complete. The theater that we see on the stage was very monochromatic. It was one kind and generally of one people. And the stories of the political other, were grossly missing. So that motivated me to honor the stories and begin to tell the stories that don't just represent the dominant groups, but the groups outside of them. So that became the foundation of the company that I formed, with sense of politics and respect for the diversity. And I realized that literary shelves were pretty empty of the theater of the political other. So I placed a lot of emphasis on creating the work in Canada based on a Canadian experience of the minority communities. So that's how I came into being a playwright and form my company to be able to produce the work and to be able to produce other people's work, all of the above. Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you. And then we'll go to Gail.
Well, thank you, Justin and Rahul. So I actually came to theatre when my children were young, and we were living in Lakefield, Ontario at the time. And there was the Ontario Arts Council had a program called Contact, which I don't even know if it's still going, but it was a way to bring theatre to smaller communities throughout the province. And I was part of a group of parents who brought in a play series to Lakefield. Lakefield has a private boys' school, which has really nice theatre, and they made that theatre space available to the community. And some really good theatre was available for us to bring for the children. And so it's natural that I got into TYA when I started writing, and I got really excited about stories I was reading from Africa. And I thought, why don't we hear these stories? I would like to present these stories to a wider audience. And that's how I started to write theatre for young audiences and bring the stories of Africa to those young audiences. And even when I write my adult stories, I still like to bring a certain sensibility that is different from what you would usually see. And one of the stories, the plays I've written, although it's based in, let's see, it's well known, a well-known character, but I've approached it from a slightly different angle.
Right. Okay, well, look forward to continuing that conversation as soon as I disappear so you can actually talk. Great. So it's great to meet both of you. And I'm excited to read both of your plays as well when I get some time in. And yeah, for our audience, just some housekeeping things. This is about a 1-hour interview. And if you think of any questions throughout the conversation, just throw them in the chat and I will forward those to the writers in the last kind of 10 to 5 minutes of the hour. And with that, I'm going to pass the torch off to Gail to interview Rahul. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. So Rahul, I'm really drawn to your plays because they are global and they tackle subjects that we might hear about, you know, for a little while in the news, and then they disappear because the news cycle has moved on to something else. But they're all subjects that have a really deep meaning, and we are a small world, and the things that happen in other places affect people in Canada. There are people from these places in Canada. There are people who aren't from these places who also might have some kind of connection to knowing about what's going on. So what do I want to say? I'd like you to talk about how, because your plays they're based with specific events, but you take them out of the specific in some ways with your characters. And how do you bring these characters to talk about the specific, but be broader?
Thank you, Gail. This is a wonderful question, and I think that it just allows me to enter into this conversation that I actually wanted to have. At the very beginning of my talk, I said that I started put the emphasis on playwriting for the purpose of creating stories on the basis of Canadian experience. I do believe the Canadian experience is because Canadian experience live in people of Canada, who have the histories outside of Canada all over the world. So that bridging has to be found, and it has to just go into the story. So just let's be a little bit comparative here. the many of the issues, the immigrant communities has come here with memories. The memories live with us. The memories are past in the present. Now we need to find an expression for those things, and yet my emphasis has been that how does that memory impact Canada, and what kind of a role does it play in building the Canadian nation and Canadian community, and how does it become a Canadian experience? So I've been very selective about it. The global themes that I choose are, if they are not the totally domestic experience of Canada, such as counter-offense or no man's land or isolated incident or job stealer, which are all in Canada based in on the Canadian soil. If I go anything outside of it, I'll see what's the bridge between Canada and other part of the world. So the issues therefore get very restricted. So it's about human rights, it's about rights of women, it's about war and peace, it's about environment, because these are cosmopolitan global issues. And then I say, well, how does Canada fit into it? Canada fits into those stories if I create the Canadian characters concerned with things not just only in our land, but outside of it, and Canadian locale, that Canadian land begins to get impacted with that story. So it's that complex situation. Essentially, it permits us to write a play on the basis of intersectionality rather than one particular issue. You see, in every play, we need to find a focus. The focus is not a one issue thing. Focus is to be assigned to the intersectionalities of multiple issues and how they branch out from there. So Canada becomes a point of convergence. It becomes a point of convergence of so many stories from everywhere else, but impacting the Canadian values, impacting Canadian people, being told on behalf of Canada, and being told by Canadian people, whether they are new Canadians or old Canadians. So that's a bit of what I would say the ideological or theoretical base of choosing to tell the stories. The beauty of that is that the global experience in the areas that I mentioned has to become local experience, and then it's a totally new Canadian play. That's been the approach.
So perhaps you could give us an example of that with a reading, maybe from Bhopal.
Okay, so I think you had assigned me 2 scenes, and just so that we can have more of a conversation, I would read a scene from Bhopal to just give a little bit of a background of Bhopal prior to this scene. You see, Bhopal is a capital city of central province of India called Madhya Pradesh, and it hosted a factory called Union Carbide at the time, which actually established in India much before the independence of India in 1947. And it was part of the agrarian revolution, that you produce more and therefore you feed more people, so-called green revolution. But the factory in 1984, which was producing pesticides in a place that was very ripe to and very well suited to create pesticides without caring for the people, it exploded. And it exploded and killed about 3,000 people overnight, and 20,000 plus people to date. And it's been recorded as one of the worst industrial accident that has taken place in the world. Issue is not about the industrial accident. They continue to happen. Issue is also not whether it is the worst one or not. The issue is that what kind of a global relationship exists that permits such accidents to occur in the poor countries who benefit least from the produce of these factories. So there is a power relationship here. And it is also not a technical issue that the factory had gone wrong because technology was bad. That technology was created by people in power. So it's a very human thing. And how this particular issue has impacted not just those who were affected that particular night, but how generations, even 36 years, this year was 36th anniversary, that how children who are born still continue to be impacted by that. With that little bit background, and also I said that, how I do the intersectionality into the plays. In this particular play, a Canadian doctor, uh, a, a white francophone Canadian doctor, goes to India to do some work about the health of women living in the vicinity of the Union Carbide factory. And then she gets manipulated by the local government of interfering into the system. She was treating women, and the minister says that she's in fact infecting their minds, and she wanted to bring one of those child to Canada to demonstrate in a conference as to what the environmental catastrophe have done, and she gets accused of kidnapping that child. So I'm going to be reading that particular scene for you, from where the minister confronts this Canadian doctor who is accused of kidnapping the children, even though she was helping the children. Minister is Mr. Jaganlal, and the doctor's name is Sonia. Sonia, for kidnapping. Jaganlal, yes, for kidnapping. Sonia, have you gone complete?
Do we lose Rahul there?
Yeah, I can't hear him. He's frozen.
Oh no. Okay, we'll try to get him back. Okay. While we wait for Rahul to come back on screen, Gail, I wonder if you could tell our audience just a little bit about like how you first became exposed to Rahul's work. Like, was there a specific play that you saw in theaters, or you just found his work somewhere, like in an article?
I was talking to Rahul on some kind of conference.
Okay.
And I thought he sounded really interesting. And I actually had heard about his theatre before and had read a couple of issues of the magazine that he and his theatre produce. And I'm trying to remember the name of the, it's Alt Theatre.
Right.
And so it's about alternative theatre, different types of people doing theatre, and how this theatre is not your classical theatre. And I got really interested in his work through that.
Right.
Yeah, and then I started reading some of his work, and I thought, oh, this is really good stuff. And because I very rarely go to Montreal, I can't even remember the last time I was there. I haven't had a chance to see any of his plays performed, but well, maybe I will get to do that sometime. And the fact that he started his own theatre so that this kind of work can be performed and brought to the public instead of just waiting for somebody else to do it. I really admired that he has done this. So
Right.
I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find like for me with kind of my cohort, there's this sometimes assumption that we're in this time of big social change and like things are just changing now. But really, if you look through the history of Canadian theater, there are so many playwrights throughout the generations that have always been like taking that next step to give us representation as marginalized communities and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's important to remember that it's all stepping stones.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, Montreal has a couple of really neat theaters, and Black Theatre Workshop is one of them. And I think they're teaming up with the NAC this season
right.
As a partner. And I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but I just thought that was a good step in the right direction there.
Right. I'm guessing maybe Rahul's computer might have died, so he'll probably be back in a bit. I emailed him, so we'll just hang tight there. But yeah, it's so. Did you end up moving to Ohio to do most of your work for a while, or was that just because of the pandemic that you needed to go down there?
I have lived in Ohio for a few years, and planning, well, as of last fall, I decided I would go to BC because I just prefer Canada to the US. Although
Right.
I must say that the theatre scene in Cleveland has been really great. There's some really talented people here, and it's a very welcoming scene. But I wanted to go back to Canada, so I went looking for a place last fall. Found somewhere, and was planning. It's going to close in when is it going? End of March. And so I was planning to go back a little bit before that, but now that the government has imposed all these restrictions, and it will cost me so much money to stay in their quarantine site right now, I've decided just to stay here and see if those restrictions will get lifted within the next few months. I think they run until the end of April, so I hope they don't run any longer than that.
Right. Yeah. Still waiting for Rahul to join.
Yeah.
We'll get him back soon.
I'm wondering if I should maybe read from my
yeah, why don't
TYA play.
Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, let me find it. This was a play called The Ober Asked for a Mountain. And when I write theatre for young audiences, I really like to give them something to think about. It's not overt, but it's there. And this is a very greedy man. And it's set in what's now Nigeria, in an area called Ilesha. So this is near the beginning of the play, but not quite the beginning. And the two messengers have come into the town square very aggressively. Messenger one: we have traveled far from the palace of the Ober. Benny is a female character. And she says, welcome to Ilesha. Please accept our hospitality. And she offers them some palm wine. The messengers accept the wine. The second messenger turns to address members of the audience who are now the townspeople. It is good that you are all gathered here. Greetings, people of Ilesha. The great Ober sends us to you with a message. You know the great Ober, his wealth and his unbeatable army. You understand that he expects a suitable tribute from all neighboring kingdoms. He has heard that you in Elisha grow vegetables of magnificent size and taste in your fertile soil. Therefore, he demands that you provide him with vegetables for his next feast in 3 weeks' time. Is this acceptable to you? Dio, who is one of the male characters, and the Benny say yes. Then the first messenger says, that is good. That way, the Oba will have no cause to make war on the kingdom of Elisha. Messenger 2, there is one more thing. The great Oba demands that these vegetables be as fresh as the day they were picked. If you bring any that are shriveled or rotten to the Oba's feast, he will be forced to make war on Elisha. Messenger 1 says, that is all. And the messengers walk away. Abeni says, but it takes 15 days to reach the Oba's palace. How can our produce remain fresh over such a journey? Dio says, it is impossible. And of course, the Oba keeps making impossible tasks because he really does want to make war on Elisha because they have gold and that's what he really wants. And I see Rahul is back. And where did we leave you, Rahul?
Okay, I'm so sorry. My computer died on me, so I had to reboot it. My apology. So could I resume from, yes? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start it from the beginning. So it is the Dr. Sonia Labonte was a Canadian doctor. She's been accused of kidnapping children of India while she was helping them. And accuser is the chief minister of the province of Madhya Pradesh, where the Bhopal incident happened. Sonia, for kidnapping, Jaganlal. Yes, for kidnapping. Sonia. Have you gone completely insane? Jaganlal. Is that a way to talk to Chief Minister? Sonia. Who is charging me? Jaganlal. Dr. Labonte, I trusted you. I gave you a seat on the advisory board of one of the most important missions. I even granted you privileges reserved only for Indians. How can you stand there and tell me with a straight face that you were not abusing the privileges I granted you? Sonia, abusing? I have simply been carrying out my research. Jagannath, oh, we both know you have been doing a lot more than the research. You have lost your perspective, doctor, and you completely overstepped the boundaries of your study. Sonia, I am just trying to help women in the city. It's obvious that the problems are carbide is poisoning. Jaganlal, doctor, these are unfounded, untrue allegations. And Sonia, have you read my research? Did you read any of the interim reports? Can anyone in your office read? Jaganlal, your research will be impounded until we get to the bottom of this scam. Sonia, you haven't even looked at it. Jagannath, whether or not I have read your material is not issue. Doctor, the issue is kidnapping. You have tried to smuggle 2 Indian citizens out of the country. Sonia says, I need to call my embassy. Jagannath, you need to? I'm a Canadian citizen. Jagannath, therefore what? I'm a field physician with a UN-sanctioned NGO. Jagannath, I have seen many such missionaries from the West. Sonia, Mr. Minister, you can't do this to me. Jagannath, yes, I can. poor, hungry, destitute they may be, doctor, but the children of my country are sacred. So I'm going to stop at that scene, Gail. And it was that encounter between that minister and the doctor. So,
yeah, and what I found interesting in that is the line. Well, all about there was lots interesting in there, but the line where the minister says we have seen so many missionaries,
yeah,
and there's something to that about missionaries going to other people's country and trying to indoctrinate the people with their own view. And so the minister is accusing the doctor of doing this. And the doctor, I suppose he has a point, but she's preventing the people or not even preventing, but she's shining a light on the problems that are being caused by this foreign multinational that's come in. And so the multinational is kind of a missionary itself.
yes. So, and by that extension, the minister who has internalized the multinational is part of the plot of the missionary mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So by choice, like one of the thing that happens, particularly from India, the country that I come from, and there is a large number of migrants have come and lived in Canada today. But expression and the representation, or even the understanding of India through the arts and all that, is very exotified. And the people who go to India mostly, or more often than not, go for religious or spiritual or some exotic purposes. I purposely make a choice here to send a Canadian doctor who was dedicated to health and welfare of the people, and was dedicated actually to the environmental reform. So there is a little bit of a break of a stereotype that instead of the gurus, or instead of the spirituals, or instead of these yoga vacations, let's send a social servant to India. And yet minister is so primed with the stereotype that even a social worker, a human rights worker, or an environmental activist, he refers to her as a missionary. So that idea of assigning blame on the West with some stereotypical term, which had been an oppressive or at least fraudulent term at a certain time, it works. It works in a political favor of the powers that are in place.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to undo that system. So my doctor, Sonia Labonte, represents totally the opposite, yet she gets accused. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so there's in another play of yours, there's also that kind of difference in what is presented and perceived and what actually is happening. And I'm thinking here of the one where there's an abused wife.
Yeah.
And the policeman comes and he arrests the husband, and because these are non-whites, the policeman is accused of racism. And so this woman is in this position where she has a double problem, because she's being abused by her husband, but also other people in the community are not allowing her to really free herself from this, because they're saying, well, the cops shouldn't be doing this to this man, and she shouldn't be doing this to the man.
Yes. Yeah, so you're talking about the Counter-Offense. Counter-Offense is a play that I wrote, in fact, in 1995. We had a production of it in 1996, then 97, and then it was translated into French, has had a production in French, was also translated in Italian, and had several productions in some parts of the country. Not too many, but it has had more productions outside of Canada than inside Canada. And it was also anthologized in modern Canadian plays. So the thing here is that it's a play where the conflict is redefined. See, the dramatic conflict that there is a good side or a bad side or less good side and a less bad side, they are colliding with each other. In this particular play, the virtues are colliding. The violence against women that exists in the domestic situation must end. The racism against the people of color that exists all over the society must also end. But what do you do in a scenario where these two virtues are colliding with each other? That we are trying to end the violence against women, but the police officer who comes to protect her gets accused of racism. And this is what I was talking about, the intersectionality, that that it's not, conflict is not enough, but what's the competing truth? So the scenario of the play is that a wife, immigrant wife, has been hit by her immigrant husband, and both people of color, and she's protected, defended, and helped by a white police officer. And in turn, the white police officer get accused of racism against the husband. And someone comes to defend of the white police officer, and that is a Black social activist. And she says that, well, her community is not the ethnic community, but her community is the community of women. And therefore, she sides with the white police officer, where it is very clear that the record of the Canadian white police force against Black people is very murky. It was very dangerous. So the degree of problem that I have given to these characters is very compliant to the situation in Canada that we are living in. And it became exaggerated, particularly after COVID lockdown. As you would know, that the incidents of violence increased 30% because the women got confined in their homes, and they became victim of a husband's rage. And so we do not need to have a COVID to demonstrate that this violence continues to exist. But at the same time, the complexity of that is that the theme of the play, the story of the play, exists at an intersection of some certain competing struggles. So that's what this play was about. And I'm going to give you a little, and I'll be very happy to talk to you more about it. One thing is about this one is that this is also a play that we were producing in month of March, and it got shut down after two runs because of the COVID. So I'm waiting for the COVID to go away so I can remount the play. So I'm going to read a little scene from this. And in this scene, Clarinda, who is a Black social activist, and Moolchand, who is an Indian, East Indian anti-racist activist, and Shapur, who is the wife beater, has been arrested, and Moolchand comes to rescue him from jail and comes to confront Clarinda as to why is she helping the white police officer rather than a Black person. So she comes to his office. Moolchand enters her office. Clarinda, why are you here? Moolchand, no. Please, give me an opportunity to greet you. Clarinda, what do you want? Moolchand, how are you? Clarinda, I need your help. I really do. Clarinda, how? Moolchand, it's about Shapur. Clarinda, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moolchand, I know how you feel. Please listen. He's a good man with so much of potential. I know right now that he can't control his temper, but he needs our help. He can't get help if he's thrown out. What I'm saying is, us, the East Indians, the Africans, the Chinese, people like you and me, if we are to survive, we must be united, help each other. Clarinda says, because we are coloreds. Moolchand, without Shazia, Shapur has nobody here, no family, no support, nothing. Right now, he happens to be one of the many unfortunate men in this country because he happens to be a man of a wrong color and a wrong culture. Clarinda, nobody's culture equals torture. He hit her because he's an angry man and she is his woman. It's called transference. Look it up. It's nothing to do with culture. Moolchand, please, listen to me. Listen to me, please. Help us. He's not a typical Kanak, opens a beer, watches hockey, and scores punches as his wife for fun. Clarinda, no, he doesn't play hockey. Moolchand, he's one of us, you see. Clarinda, isn't she also one of us? Moolchand, that's why she should not deport him. Clarinda, first of all, she's not deporting him. He broke the law. And second, what is she supposed to do? Give him an opportunity to attack her again and turn the crime against her into her own fault? No. Moolchand. Okay. This thing bears signature of some very important ethnic leaders, including a couple of colored MPs. Clarinda. Signature for what? Moolchand. Stop his deportation. Clarinda. Where did you get all these? Moolchand. I'm trying to help Shapur. Clarinda. I'm trying to protect Shazia. Moolchand. Somebody should try to forgive him. Clarinda. Somebody is trying to forget him. Moolchand. Is that why she's gone public? Clarinda. Oh, God forbid, if the victims go public, the world might hear them. Moolchand. But what do we hear? Victims? No, Miss Clarinda keeps zero tolerance in the Gazette. Shapur's father is a lunatic on the CBC. How about hearing him? No wonder she provokes the hell out of him. Clarinda. Provoking ain't a crime. Battering is. Got that? So that was the scene, Gail. And
Yeah.
as you would see that, there is a defining and redefining of the community, and the allegiance is the issue rather than a particular ethnicity, even from a very minority perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that in a longer run, we need to commit to the idea of the zero tolerance. And in order for us to do that, we need to see that that our ethnicities must not prevent good values.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just the thing. I mean, it just draws me into talking to you about that. How did this play came about? Because I was talking to my friend David Carley, who was a CBC dramaturge, and he at one point said that case of a conjugal abuse where the police officer did not intervene because the wife that was being battered was black, and he wanted another police officer, preferably a woman or a colored police officer, to come to the scene to be a witness that he will not be accused of racism against this black man.
And the woman suffers.
And woman was suffering. And so my friend said that, don't you see this serious problem? And I said, no, I think policeman is very racist because he is not protecting a black woman from being battered. So he's being racist against her gender, and he's also being racist against her color. Because why is it that the call of a man for racism is valued, and the same for women is not. So I think that we had a little pause. So David says that, so Rahul, what are you thinking? I say, I just got the conflict of the play, and that's what I'm going to write. So that's how this play just came about. And of course, I included the characters from different backgrounds, the South Asians, the Iranians, the Black people, the Anglophones and Francophones, because that's what our streets are like. We need to create stories that are diverse from the very inception, not by tick mark mentality. But the second point about this particular thing is that we have to be able to see how ethnic communities, the minority communities, and to what extent they may be implicit in their own oppression, because why do they have to negotiate one value against the other? And I think that's how the society is emerging. And therefore I have keep saying that all plays have to learn the idea that the conflict is intersectionality of the issues, and these issues are not single, they are multiple. They need to converge, and we need to be able to find focus of multiple issues into one story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you have a question for me, maybe?
Well, yes, I think that the question for you would be in plain sight, it's about exile.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the exile is not just the country, but the exile is of memory. Exile is of everything that was part of your history.
Yes.
And when exile becomes, people become undiagnosed, they begin to be referred as undocumented, as if they don't have existence. I was wondering if you would like to speak about that how do you reshape the history so that the people are people and not undocumented elements?
Yeah. Well, in that play, we have a man from Africa who, even though he was taken when slavery was ending, he was taken from Mozambique. And this is based on a real story, and I don't actually know anything about this man. But so I had to recreate his story. And he became, and the ship that he was taken on was captured in South Africa, and the people were taken to South Africa, but they weren't free. They were indentured servants. And so they were actually slaves in all but name. And this character becomes the servant of a doctor who everybody at the time thinks is a man. And the doctor is also exiled because the doctor grew up as a woman and becomes male. And the two of them go to different places around the world. So they're in South Africa, they're in the West Indies, they're in Canada, in Montreal. They're in different places where the British Empire goes, and they are also in the Crimean War.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the doctor's life, they are in London, and the doctor, he has been exiled from his entire past because he's hidden his past throughout his adult life.
Yeah.
And the man, the manservant, has really got no past,
Yes.
because he was taken away from his home when he was so young, and he's having to say, what am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
And where where am I without this doctor who has been my life since I was a young person?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exile from themselves as well as exile from their countries.
And this is one of the things that I liked very much into this thing, because our quest for identity, it is so central, so centered on who we are by birth, where we were born, what was the geography, or what was the tree like, what was the river like, and all that, uh, and less so what were the values associated with wherever I was, and what those values meant. And I think that in the African stories, I think you said at the beginning of your talk that you were fascinated by the African stories, and right away I took note here is that I was very fascinated with Indian stories, because one of the things there is that they are contemporary yet very mythological, that very imaginary and very dealing with the supernatural, but the supernatural is doing the things that are very humane but not necessarily um, making the impossible possible, kind of a thing. But the and they were not very, they're simple. The common person can hear those stories and make sense out of it, because all the metaphors are life experiences, and I think every metaphor would explain the multiple behaviors that multiple realities that we live in our lives. So it totally connects to your other play, the Oba Asks for a Mountain. uh, that 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 mythology and that storytelling becomes a kind of an encouragement for the younger audiences, who all of us want, because we need the younger people to grow up to become our theater audience as they grow up. So it's a great degree of service you have done with very beautiful stories, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think the young audience is a relevant audience by itself, even though they're young. I think they can get a lot from theatre, and I really enjoy writing for young audiences. And so they will become audiences of the future, but I like them as audience of now as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I don't think we have a whole lot of time left, but is Justin going to let me read from a little bit from In Plain Sight?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, so I will just read from the beginning. And the year is 1865, and we are in a rented room in London. Although it is daytime, the curtains are drawn over the window, leaving the room semi-dark. An African man, wearing the suit of a gentleman and a top hat, sits stage front. He is reading a newspaper. Behind him can be seen a figure, covered with a quilt, lying on the bed. Military clothes, jacket, trousers, waistcoat, a long cavalry sword hang near the bed, along with long bandages and body padding. There are also boots on the floor. Beside the bed is a side table with the remains of a mostly uneaten meal, a jug of water and a glass. The African's name is Danson, and the doctor is James Barry. Danson stands up and places the newspaper on the chair, takes off his hat, also places it on the chair. He takes off his jacket. He goes to the figure on the bed, touches him. The figure does not stir. Danson goes to the window, pulling aside the curtain a little. This city is like no other, not the sun-washed towns of the Caribbean, or the Cape in winter with its chill winds off the sea, nor the icy freeze of Montreal. This is a city of dirt and fog, soot and mud. In winter, the damp creeps into the very bones and fingers. And this summer, the heat is more fetid than the Indies. He looks over to the figure in the bed. We have been nomads a lifetime, he and I. Now he returns to a place that was a home of a kind, the place that saw his launch into manhood. And I, a nomad I remain. You could say that manhood came stealthily and unheralded for us both. Yet he has found his place, while I have not found mine. Barry stirs in the bed. His voice is weak. Danson, did you speak? Danson, only to myself. You know how I am, Barry. Of all people, it is you I should know. We know each other better than any other person alive. You've had so little company but mine. It's no wonder you speak to yourself. Now, do I have to cut this off now? Justin?
You can finish. You can finish.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm sure we want to hear it. Yeah.
In public, I hold my tongue. In private, I speak. Barry, I have never told you how grateful I have been for your public silence. Danson gives him some water. I already know of your gratitude. Rest. Barry, my friends remark upon the silence of your presence. Danson, if they remark upon me at all. Barry, it is rare that a servant is recognized. Danson, and a black-skinned servant especially. Barry, the servant from the Indies at Lady Somerset's. She is a fine woman. I've seen your glance go her way. Danson returns to the window. He is about to open it. Barry, keep the window closed. The air stinks. Danson, you've always advised fresh air. Barry, the air in London is not fresh. Danson, true enough. Barry, Danson, help me get up. I must be dressed. Danson, you would be more comfortable staying in your bed in your nightshirt. Barry, you know I must be dressed. Danson, you say that every time you're ill. Barry, you and I both know this time is the last time. Danson, that is what you fear. Barry, I don't fear death. Danson, I know that. Only prying. Discovery. Barry, that must never happen. Help me up. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Oh, beautiful. Wonderful. It's very beautiful. Maybe we should have spent more time letting you read. This was excellent. So I don't believe that we are getting any questions in the chat. So maybe
we have no questions. Okay.
Yeah. So I believe that it is you. You can just throw any question at me.
Oh, wow. What question do I have for you? I can't think of one right now.
Well, Justin, you might step in anytime you want to.
Yeah. Great. So we're about 7:02 Mountain Time. So that's, we're almost at the end of the hour. We're over the hour anyways.
Yeah.
So if anyone that listens to this in the future or right now has any questions, maybe they can send us an email and I can send those to you if you're open to answering any questions that people come up with.
Sure.
Yeah. I'll make sure not to spam you with anything. But I think we'll end it there. And I guess I just want to end, I want to kind of roll out the virtual red carpet for the two of you. Is there anything, even though it's COVID, that you're working on or going to be working on soon that you'd love people to know about? Yeah, either of you.
Well, sure. I think that one of the, Gail, you want to talk about it, or I go ahead?
Oh, well, I am working on a radio play right now, so that's what I have in the works. And then I'm researching another TYA play, so that is not really started yet. I'm just kind of going through my research to find out how it's going to go.
Right.
Well, in my case, I took the advantage of COVID lockdown because I had a time to sit down at home, had no opportunity to leave. So I just created. So this last year, 10 months, have created 3 plays, first draft of 3 plays
Whoa.
for me.
Wow.
Yes.
Whoa.
So one is called, and as I think that there's one called, it's a kind of a comedy I try to write called Dad's New Wife. And it tackles the multiple issues: arranged marriage, ageism, cross-cultural marriages, and things of that sort. But particularly it's about the struggle, the freedom of especially of women to choose the man they want to marry and what they want to do with him.
Right.
The second play is about the sex selective abortion. It's a growing practice in Canada whereby the parents very often from the cultural communities predetermine the sex of the child, and if she happens to be a girl child, they would abort her, not because choice making a choice, but making a choice because she happens to be a girl child. Not very frequent, but it is quite disturbing. So this is the play that I'm writing called My Father Would Have Killed Me.
Right.
And then I'm writing another one called Merchant of God, which is a little bit of a stab at so multiple Indian gurus who have become a multimillionaire. They're one of the most lucrative immigrants who have come. They have most lucrative immigrant export that third world countries have done to the first. So that's my third one. So this has been a very creative time.
I think you're the first person that I've talked to or playwright that has said they've been able to write in the pandemic. So congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to see them soon. I
Yes.
guess I just have like a one word answer question is the two of you, when we talked about through the interview, do you as playwrights, do you start with like a socio-political or like a thematic topic to begin with, or does that come later? Just curious because a lot of playwrights are always trying to figure out how to start.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gail.
I usually start with something that very much interests me, and then I find characters to fit that interest. With the children's plays, it's usually the story is already there, but I introduce characters because they're usually just short folk tales. And so I introduced characters that I would like to see. So my very first children's play was called Mella Mella. And the character that I introduced was this medicine woman who ended up being my favorite character. And yeah, so I generally start with what interests me, and then I bring in the characters with in plain sight. I was the theme, as well as exile, was how Black people are kind of written out of the history that we generally see. And I saw a picture of James Barry and her Black manservant. And I wanted to know, who is this manservant? Why do we know nothing about him at all? And so I just wrote about him in relationship to James Barry.
Okay. Well, I don't know what happened to Justin.
No, he's disappeared.
He disappeared. So I'm hoping that he's just going to come back.
Yeah.
But I think that in my case, my case is the similar, because I'm not struggling to find issues. The issues are already there. I think the world is complex. I think it's just a matter of what I choose to do. So the selection is made on the basis of which is the issue that will that'll be good to represent the community that I care for, and those are the people who are marginalized by whatever definition. And this issue does not have to be easy. I like to take difficult issues. And so there is a saying there, that I'm going on a road, and that the road is bifurcating into two directions. One is the easy one is the harder one. Which one you choose? I choose the harder one, because the harder the issue, better exploration I get to do that. So
Yeah.
And I do not think, and I think that the plays do transform as we start writing them, and I be moving. I mean, there are new discoveries are made and new things come up, but I do not redefine the theme of the play in the middle of the writing. That's determined in advance, when on the first day of writing or the day prior to it. So that's my issue. So I think we will continue to talk, Gail, because we have to have Justin to close the session.
Yes, we
And
do.
I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get any audience beside us, but that's okay. They're going to post it on the
YouTube.
Yeah, so we'll get the audience there. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I did have some notes, and I'm looking to see. Yeah, I think I basically asked you all the things I wanted to ask you about.
I think that I remember a question you had asked me when we in our prep meeting is who is producing the plays, and
yes,
yeah, and because I do have a company that produces my plays. Other companies also produce, but I have a surety that I will have my
oh, there he is.
Here is Justin. Yeah. But you see, one of the things
we can't hear you.
Justin, you're muted, Justin.
Hi,
yeah.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, so this is very interesting. At the very beginning, I got locked out. At the very end, Justin got locked out, and Gail survived.
So confusing. Yeah. Well, okay, so we're live again. I guess we'll just end it there. There's a couple people still watching. Thanks for staying.
Okay.
Any final words from the two of you, Rahul and Gail?
I was answering Gail a question. Was that the idea of the producing and the kind of a play that we write, if people are what do you would do with the companies that don't produce? I think that this is a total colonial problem, because if we have invested a lot of power in the hands of the by and large the male artistic directors of a certain age, who did not have a respect for the diversity and did not have a respect for the real particular issue. So to expect that your work with the political connotation it has will get produced by one of the bigger companies, if it does happen, it's an accident. It's not regular. It's not the normal. I think the responsibility is on all of us to be able to create a sector where we can produce the meaningful work without the dependence on some of the artistic elitist leadership. So we need to not care for them.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, I think we'll end the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us tonight, and to our audience out there. Thanks for joining. This event is supported by the Playwrights Guild Canada and the Canada Council for the Arts. If you are an emerging writer and have a Canadian playwright that has influenced you, just as Gail did, and would like to interview them, send us an email and we'll try to make it happen. With that, I think we'll go off the air and let everyone go to dinner or sleep or wherever across the country. So yeah, I'm going to take us off the air. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you,
Rahul and
Justin. Thank you, audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.